All right, Ben, Brian Edwards, Major Wager, making our second UFC video. Previewed UFC 236 this upcoming Saturday just now. And now we're going to look into UFC Futures, fights coming in the next few weeks or even months in advance. And if you're new to betting the UFC, the reason why it's important to hit on these way ahead of time is sometimes you see these odds move, as we hit on in the UFC 236 preview. I got Dustin Poirier at plus 220. Now here we are as fight week arrives, and plus 180 is about the best you can do. So 40-cent difference. So if you like any of these fights, there's no reason not to bet them now. So looking ahead, we had an injury this week, and Alexei Ezekiel Chokes. That's my nickname for him because he's the only one in the UFC who's ever had an Ezekiel choke submission, and he's got one in just about every one of his fights, or all of his wins pretty much. He's stepping in on short notice to face Alistair Overeem in 2 weeks. The Reem, minus 250 favorite for this fight in the heavyweight division on April 20th, and I give Alexei Olnik an outstanding chance to win this fight. I mean, I'm not saying a big bet by any means, especially when you're talking about a plus 200 underdog. You're going to win twice as much as you risk, but I think you're good to make a small, or maybe whatever your medium average play is, at least for UFC, on Olenek. And actually, there are a couple of plus 210s out there, a plus 210 at 5 dimes. That's the main event on UFC on ESPN plus 7, again, on April 20th over in St. Petersburg, Russia. Looking to April 27th, UFC on ESPN 3, which means the prelims and the main card will be on ESPN proper. And we also had an injury here as Yoel Romero had pneumonia and had to pull out of his bout with Ronaldo Jacare Souza. And so that fight is canceled, and word coming down yesterday that Jack Hermanson is going to step in on short notice. He just had a 49-second submission of David Branch. That was last weekend, yeah. So he steps in on short notice, but he only had a 49-second workout last Saturday night. Glover Teixeira is also in action in the co-main event against Ion Cutelaba. I doubt I got that right. Anyway, the latter is a minus 155 favorite. I won't butcher it again. And Glover Teixeira is plus 135 at 5 dimes. I see William Hill actually has the aforementioned Ion. You're following me at minus 137, and Glover at even money, but all the other books have the price on the favorite amount around minus 155, minus 160. The disgraced former Carolina Panther, Greg Hardy, gets his second shot in the UFC. He lost by disqualification, an illegal knee to a grounded opponent to the head in his debut. And he is back in action against Dmitry Smolyakov. Don't know if I got that one right either. Hardy is a minus 255 chalk, and the former is a plus 215 dog. Okay, we mostly keep it to UFC, but I'll throw it out. Bellator 220, John Fitch against Rory, the Red King MacDonald, and Rory is a minus 365 favorite. Fitch plus 305 underdog at 5 dimes. That is also on April 27th, Bellator 220 headliner. Moving ahead to UFC 37 down in Brazil, Thug Rose Namajunas, the women's strawweight champion, takes her belt and puts it on the line as a road underdog. Rare that you see the champion. I shouldn't say it's that rare, but whatever. Namajunas is a road underdog to Jessica Andrade, Brazilian 115er. If you're not familiar with UFC verbiage, the strawweight division is 115 pounds. Namajunas is coming off back-to-back wins over Johanna, former champion, Jędrzejczyk, Polish fighter, who had an incredible run at strawweight, went up to flyweight for her last fight, and she might be at flyweight to stay. And I say that because you look at her Instagram account, she clearly got new boobs. So that'll make it tougher. It was already a tough weight cut for Johanna. So I would imagine she's going to stay at flyweight, which is 125 women's division. Moving on. So anyway, Andrade, minus 140. Thug, Rose, Namajunas, plus 120. No need for a whole lot of analysis here. Take Thug Rose as a dog all day long. Moving to, also on the UFC 237 card, and I'm not sure if this has been officially dubbed the co-main event, but Jose Aldo Jr., the former featherweight kingpin, will face Alex Volkanovski, who's on a nice run right now. Had a huge win over Chad Mendes here his last time out, and Mendes was putting it on his ass early and often. I had Mendes that night. Mendes, man, he was slicing and dicing Volkanovski in round one and early in round two, and it seemed Mendes just kind of hit the wall. He was in his second fight since the 2-year suspension. And I don't know, man. I don't know. He just kind of gassed a little early, and Volkanovski took over. Aldo is a minus 140 favorite. He is looking for his third straight win since losing back-to-back title fights to Max Blessed Holloway. He's got 2 thrilling wins in knockout fashion over Jeremy Stevens. And then the last time out, he knocked out Renato Moicano in what was basically a pick'em fight on February 2nd. It jumped into the crowd like he had done in his first victory over Chad Mendes many years ago. It was a great moment. I actually was not watching the fight live. I was actually at a bar and saw the highlight across the room and had to dart over there to see it, as it was awesome stuff. Okay, moving on. Moving on to UFC 238. That'll be headlined. Well, actually, I'm not sure which fight is the headliner. This is on June 8th, as Jessica Evil Eye gets a shot at the UFC Women's Flyweight Champion Valentina Shevchenko, and Shevchenko is an enormous chalk, 10-1 or minus 1,000. Jessica Eye plus 650 on the comeback at 5 dimes. Bet365's got her at plus 700. I think Shevchenko wins this fight, but obviously way too expensive for my taste. The men's fight is at 135. I think in the past it's been tradition for the UFC to use the higher weight class as the main event when they have multiple title fights. Good luck on selling this pay-per-view. Good thing they got the new ESPN deal, because those 2 headlining fights. So I'm assuming Cejudo and Marlon Moraes for the vacated 135-pound belt that TJ Dillashaw just recently relinquished voluntarily. He pissed dirty for a PED. So Moraes is on a nice run. He's had some highlight reel knockouts, and Cejudo, he beat Mighty Mouse Johnson, who had been the only flyweight champion in UFC history, had a reign of like 5 to 6 years. And then Dillashaw came down to 125 to try to become a double champ, and Cejudo knocked him out in the first round. And then Dillashaw was crying like a little bitch afterward. It was, I never liked Dillashaw anyway. So anyway, Cejudo and Moraes. Moraes is a minus 145 favorite, actually minus 135 at some spots, including 5 dimes. Cejudo plus 115 on the comeback. No real feel for either one of those. Or obviously, I think Shevchenko wins, so that's a pass. And I don't even think it's worth putting in parlays. We don't have the other bouts for that card, but I don't even know if it's worth. I don't even know that it enhances your parlay much, if any. putting a minus 1,000 favorite in there. All right, quickly wrapping up UFC 239. If you listen to my UFC 236 video, I talked a little bit about Thiago Santos, him facing John Jones. John Jones minus 600 at 5 dimes. Santos plus 450. Nobody's beating John Jones anytime soon unless he moves up to heavyweight. And I don't think Cormier can make 205 again anyway, and shouldn't have to. He's 40 years old. And it's John Jones' suspensions that made it disadvantageous for Cormier to fight him because Cormier is much older. And yet Jones is such a jerk. Anyway, Jones will win that fight. But he's so expensive again. I wouldn't even include him in parlays. All right, Amanda Nunes, after beating Cyborg with that, I shouldn't call it that stunning. The fact that it came early in round 1 after just a phone booth firefight, that was awesome. That was probably the funnest UFC moment, maybe of 2019 so far. I'm assuming that was it was several months ago. Let me make sure that was in 2019. Nunes beat Cyborg. Actually, it was December 29th of 18. My apologies. So it was a great way to cap 2018. Nunes is a minus 335 favorite against the former women's bantamweight queen Penn Holly, the preacher's daughter home, who's been in a bit of a slump lately. But, I mean, she went the distance with Cyborg. She had some heartbreakers. She lost to Misha to lose the belt. She was up 3-1 going to the 5th, and Misha was able to get a hold of her, wrestle her to the ground, and get a submission, and Holm did not tap. She went to sleep. She had to get saved by the refs. Look, I'm not recommending going against Nunes anytime soon, but Holly Holm definitely has a chance in that fight, without question. Plus 275 on the comeback at 5 dimes. I don't know why they have Woodley Covington odds out. Covington's going to fight the new champ, Marty Snoozman, is what Covington and Ben Askren call him. Kamaru Usman is the new welterweight champion. So I don't know why they have odds for Covington, Woodley, and they don't have odds for Covington and Snoozman or Usman, whichever you prefer. Okay, Brock Lesnar, Daniel Cormier came out this week. It's being targeted for UFC 241. In fact, I think Lesnar is involved with WrestleMania tonight. So look for news to break on that end probably this week, if not tomorrow or the next day. Right now at 5 dimes, Cormier is a minus 380 chalk to the defending UFC heavyweight champion, Brock Lesnar, who has really only fought once in the last 7 years. He defeated Mark Hunt at UFC 200. He'd been out more than 5 years, came back, but he ended up pissing dirty for a PED. Shocker. But he has been in the USADA program for months now and has come back clean. I saw a report probably about a month ago that he had passed like 9 or 10 tests. So we'll see on that, whether that bout comes to fruition or not. Remains to be seen. And when we relaunch tomorrow, or probably today, when you're listening to it, you'll see my column on Conor McGregor, who was a lot of out of line, a lot of out of bounds with some of his tweets toward Khabib Nurmagomedov, the champ. They're not fighting anytime soon, and I cover that in the article, but nevertheless, a lot of books have released odds for it. The Westgate listing Nurmagomedov as a minus 400 chalk against the Notorious, who is plus 300 on the comeback. Brian Edwards, MajorWager.com. There's your update on UFC Futures. Thank you much. Over and out.